Hi all, welcome to another fly tying video by me, Dave Downey of Fly Fishing World, where quality is all that matters and I only tie flies that I actually use and catch fish on. So welcome to my second instalment on my top 5 flies. The last one with the nymphs for the river done really well. A lot of people were really interested in it. I was getting a lot of good feedback, a lot of good comments, so we're going to do a dry fly one now. So this is my top 5. Now don't get confused, this is for rivers, but it'll work on still waters. I will do a still water one and I'll do a still water one for lures and other bits and pieces and nymphs. But just now I'm concentrating on the river one. So I've got 5 dry flies here that are in my box. I've got a couple of ones that I want to give an honorary mention because they're good flies, but I wouldn't call them dry flies as such, they're more sighters. So let's get started. So we're going to go to number 5. So number 5 in my list is this little CDC Sedge. Now there's nothing to it, it's a very pale yellowy colour dubbing, then you've got a bit of CDC at the top and the CDC wings split by a bit of, I've used arrow wing, so you can see it in there, there's a bit of orange arrow wing in there. That's it, it's tied in a curved hook, sits in the surface film really well, and you can see that little bit of orange, believe it or not. But yeah, it's a very good fly for difficult conditions when the fish have been very, very fussy, if you like. Now I got this fly from a very good angler, Antonio Rodrigues, the Portuguese international, who's fished for Portugal many times. Antonio, if you're ever in Colorado near Boulder, give him a look up. He works for the Front Range Anglers in America. He moved to America a few years ago, and he's a very good guide and a very good teacher, and as a fisherman he is one of the best. I mean, he is a fantastic angler, so big up to Antonio. If anybody comes into the shop and they tell you I've sent them, good on you, pal, because at the end of the day you deserve to get quite a lot of people going and getting guided by you, because you are really, really good. So that's his little fly. He done really well in the America's Cup when I fished it with him on this pattern. As I says, it's pretty basic, there's not much to it, but for me it's one of those go-to flies that I need in my box. I don't always use it, but when I'm finding it difficult, then I'll jump onto this and I'll give it a try, and you know, he catches quite a lot of fish. So I hope you enjoyed that one. And remember, if you're new to the channel, thanks very much for coming to have a look. Hit the like button if you like the channel, hit the subscribe button, let your pals know. We're trying to get the subs up, every bit helps, all helps the channel, and it helps me do more videos. So that's number 5, so we're going to swap and we're going to go to number 4 next. So back in a minute. Welcome back, we're on to number 4. Number 4 is another wee fly that I was given a good while ago. Now I've seen this in a certain catalogue called the Lubos Rosa fly. Now as far as I know, maybe Lubos did invent it, but I know all the Czech guys have got it. So yeah, maybe it was Lubos's fly, but I certainly got this one from Martin Droz a long time ago. And I can't even remember what the Czech guys call it, but it's just a ball of fluff. There's nothing to it, but it's another one of those patterns. Took me quite a long while to actually use it because I didn't like the look of it. I didn't think it was a great fly, but once I used it, yeah, it's good. And you can hang a little nymph under it, especially if you're fishing shallow potley water. It'll float right through. I mean, there's basically, it's like 3 CDC feathers all dubbing looped with a bit of twinkle at the tail, pearl twinkle, and he's used like a ruby red thread. And I've watched Martin fish it, hanging it on his nymph leader, sorry, couldn't get that out there, but he'll use his nymph leader and he'll have that, and he's basically dibbling it across the surface with a nymph below it in Czech Republic, and it worked fantastic. I've used it all over the world. It's another one of them patterns like number 5. You kind of, you'll use it when you're struggling with other things and you're trying to think outside the box, because to be quite honest, there's only really 3 dry flies that I use all the time. These ones are kind of jump back to them if I'm struggling and I can't get my other ones to work, or the fish have been really pernickety and awkward. So that's number 4. So I think I've done a video on that. I'm pretty sure there's a video on the YouTube, but if there's any videos, if there's any videos I don't have done, I will do them. If you want to ask any questions or you use any of these patterns, don't forget, stick it in the comments below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Alright, so that's number 4. So we're going to move on to number 3 next. Number 3 is one that's quite a popular fly. It's got different variations. So without further ado, let's move on to number 3. Okay guys, we're on to number 3, getting excited. I think you're all going to know what number 1's going to be. It's no hidden agenda. There's a certain fly that I really like. This is number 3. This is a Jingler. It's March Brown Jingler. Now, what I did learn was the messier the Jingler the better. I mean, the first Jinglers I ever had, Jake Harvery gave me them. Jake's been river champion, I don't know how many times now, 3, 4, maybe even more than that, but I know he's a fantastic angler. He's been in the world team. He's yeah, and he gave me a Jingler off way back when I fished my first ever rivers heat on the River Tummel, and I kind of regretted it because it ended up the fish were on the olives, and I caught quite a lot of fish on the Jinglers that he gave me. And the ones he tied, I can't get them as messy as his. He actually had the stalks of the partridge sticking out and everything. You know, it was like, oh, terrible looking. But you know what, they caught fish and all that. You can change the body. This is a March Brown version, as I said, but I like it with just plain olive thread as a body, or you can use yellow if you want a yellow May type Jingler, or you can use olive dubbing, but I prefer the fly just to have that straight thread, and that's it. No rib, no nothing. And the tail, I've kind of started tying them with Coq de Leon, but that's partridge for the tail. And then you've got a red game hackle. I always use red game. 4 or 5 tons of hackle, so that hackle's actually holding the fly in the surface, and then you've got the partridge at the front. But yeah, it ended up, I did beat Jake that day, and he ended up, we both got to the final, and then I beat him in the final as well, but that was on nymphs on the River Tweed. But Jake was the reserve that year, and then we went and fished the River Wear for my first Rivers International. So the Jingler's got a lot of good memories, and you know, it's another fly that I pull out, especially when the big fish are up and they're eating the big olives and the big March Browns. So great fly. Remember, different variations, so give it a try. Leave your comments below, let me know how you get on with it. We're going to number 2 now, so people that know me will probably know what number 2 is. There's a lot of names getting dropped with these dry flies, so yeah, a lot of good anglers getting their names dropped with these dry flies, because they give, you know, you accumulate flies over the years and people give you different things, and you get your own confidence in them. But number 1 is one that I've done, so let's get on with it. Let's go on to number 2. Right, so we're on to number 2. Number 2 is a fly tied by a gentleman, and he's very pernickety. Neil Sinkler has been Rivers champion in Scotland as well and fished at world levels. We call him Daddy Dry Fly. Well, I call him Daddy Dry Fly because he likes to fish dry fly as much as possible. Very rarely you see Neil fishing nymphs or an indicator. 90% of the time he's on a dry fly. Even in the winter, he's got a challenge that he uses on the local rivers here. He wants to catch a grayling every month on the dry fly, and I think up until this year he'd done it for something like 10 years in a row, but this year he never managed it. Sorry Neil, but aye, he never managed it. This is his little foam done, and he's always tinkering and changing it. He ties it on a jig hook now. I prefer it just on a straight hook, and it's just basically, you can tie it olive ones, you can tie black ones, you can tie yellow ones for yellow maize. You can tie them in bigger sizes. This is a 16, so it's just Coq de Leon for the tail. The thread's the sheer wisp 14-0, and it's a burnt orange, and it gives it that wee orange underneath. And there is a video on my YouTube channel. I will put the links below for all the videos of these flies that I've got done, so you can quickly access it. But it's just CDC at the front, very, very simple, but you know what, it's a great fly and it catches a lot of fish. I don't tie it on bigger hooks, 16 and below. I'll tie it to 20s, but for some reason I can't get a 14 or a 12 or a 10 to work. They just don't seem to work for me. But it's the profile of this fly. If you look at the profile, it just, yeah, it really is, with the little bits of foam and the shape, and it just looks like a fly. In a profile, as I say, I'm a great believer that the fish can't really see the colours that much from underneath. They just see the shape, and the profile and the size is more important to me than colours. But I like the brown one. It's a personal preference, isn't it? So at the end of the day, it's really your choice. But yeah, that's a great wee fly. Works really well, and right down to a 20. I mean, you would think you wouldn't see that, but you do see it. You just see the little bit of CDC. And there's a fly the American guys gave me a good few years ago called a Puff Daddy, which is basically just a CDC feather sticking up. There's no body, no nothing, you know, and it's very much just a bit of CDC, nothing else. But that catches fish as well, and it's pretty simple. But a lot of it's up here. Getting your head round using some of these patterns, because they don't look right, but because they don't look right doesn't mean to say they don't work. So that's number 2. Now we're going to go into number 1, which I'm pretty sure you all know what it's going to be, because my box is full of them, for size 20s right up to 14s. Alright, so without further ado, let's get on to number 1. So we're on number 1. You guess what it is yet? I'm pretty sure you have. Yes, it's a Cburg. And Cburg to me is just a perfect little fly. You know, that one's not as spiky as what I normally like it. I normally like tying it with a squirrel, so it's really, really spiky in the thorax. But it's so simple, dead easy to tie. You can rattle these up in 2-3 minutes. Cocktail on for the tail. Bit of yellow pale thread. I use the sheer wisp pale yellow. Couple of CDC feathers and a bit of squirrel round the thorax. And honestly, it's caught me fish everywhere. It's caught me huge fish, and it's another one of them things. I've got so much confidence in this pattern, and I didn't call it a Cburg. That was some of the guys that got the flies from me. I've been to Czech Republic with me, and you know, there's that many different patterns out there, and I just kind of messed about until I got one I was happy with. And for me, it is, if Cburg could only make one fly for the rivers, this is it. I mean, it's just, I've not really got a lot of words for it, to be quite honest, because it's done so well for me, and I've got so much confidence, and I know if I put it in the right timing. I think a lot of dry fly fishing on the rivers is about timing. It's about silhouette and that in size. You know, getting the right sort of profile on a fly, getting over the fish at the right time. Because I think when fish in the rivers generally are on a timer. You know, you'll see them coming up. They'll come up. They'll come up. They'll come up every 10 seconds or 15 seconds, depending on the size of the hatch. Some fish will be a wee bit more regular, but if I see a fish, you know, feeding like that, then I know once I get the fly over them at the right time, they're going to take it. And I don't believe in this spooking fish and you're only going to get one cast at a fish and that and blah blah blah. As long as you've got a decent length of leader, and I normally fish a 15-foot leader with another 3 foot of Jackson on the point 3 kilo Jackson 0.12, and I'll have a 15-foot tapered leader, and I'll grease the daddy dry fly taught me, grease the full leader up to about a foot for the dry fly, and then degrease that bit. That's it. And you know, the Spanish are very well known for fishing really long leaders, and it just gives you that extra bit of slack, you know, and you're going to get less drag on the fly. So yeah, get some of them tied up and get them in your box. Honestly, they're just phenomenal, and it's tied on one of my hooks, because it's quite I used to tie them on the 103 BLs, the Tiemco hooks, but they were straightening all the time. You know, they're a fantastic hook, really sharp, but they bend, they're very, very thin wired. So these are Japanese hooks, and they're much better, and I very rarely get straightened on them. What will happen now is I'll go out and I'll get straightened probably. But yeah, it's just, I mean, one of the days on the Clyde, I was on the upper stretches of the Clyde, and I had a fish that I could see smutting away in 6 inches of water, and I crawled into the water, and just before I hooked that fish, I'm not going to say caught it because I didn't catch it until 3 days later, but in the run below I was just blind casting with this dry fly, and I got a brown trout about £3. It was a beautiful hen fish. Put her back, went up, seen this tiny little smut. Most people would think it was a minnow, but it was next, and every now and again I just see a nose popping through. I get down on my hands and knees. I was away with my good pal Stuart McCabe. Down on my hands and knees, crawled into the water, sitting in the water, covering. I must have had about 20 casts at it, you know, and I was just dropping the leader over the top of the fish. And what happened was, it was a fish and he was going across, rise, back across, rise. And this fish was doing that for ages. I hooked him and he took off upstream and got off. And yeah, there was a few curses that day. I went back 3 days later with John Watson, another good pal. I thought, I wonder if that fish is still there. Went back up, caught the £3 again in the same bit of water with the same fly, blind again, no rising, and then I sat for about 15-20 minutes and up he came. It just popped up again. I thought, here we go. Went in, hands and knees again, covered, eventually hooked him. John had already walked away about, I don't know, 40-50 yards. Had to shout on him to come back. Hooked the fish. This time the fish went downstream. I went running after it. It went through my legs. John's got a video of me trying to lift my leg over the line. I get it in the net, and I think it was 62 centimetres or 60. It was a fish about 5.5, £6. He was getting out of condition, so he'd have been a lot bigger if he'd have been really good condition. My best fish ever on a dry fly in the River Clyde. It was a phenomenal fish, and what a day, and what to catch the same fish, you know, 3 days between, lose it and then go back and he's still sitting there. So, you know, it's a brilliant fly, and it was on a size 16 as well. So yeah, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember, I've got 2 other flies I want to show you. I'll show you them just at the end of the video. If you liked it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're new, I appreciate it. Every little bit helps the channel, and if you've got any mates, let them know about the channel as well, so we can get it boosted up and I can do more videos. So, back in a minute, I'm going to show you 2 flies that I think should get a mention. So, we've done my top 5. Now, these would have got in my top 5, but they're not really, they're multi-purpose dry flies, they're not just dry flies. So, they're basically sighter dry flies, but ones that catch fish. Now, I know a lot of you American guys like fishing a bobber, but fish isn't going to eat a bobber, so, you know, I would prefer to fish something like this. And there is a video, I just done a video the other week of this little CDC Sedge, and it's a David Klumpsky pattern. David actually tied this one. In the video I tied it, but this one was tied by David, and it's a lot neater than mine. But it's got the 4 elements. It's got foam, it's got a hackle, it's got CDC, and it's got deer hair. 4 elements, brilliant for floating, and when you look at it, it's just like a big sedge, and you know the fish are going to eat that. So for me, I would rather use that than use a bobber. Now, a bobber's fine if you're struggling and you want to see a big floaty thing floating past, you know, or you're in really fast moving water. But I would rather use this because it's going to catch me fish, and it's giving me more opportunity to catch fish, if that makes sense. So that's one of my mentions, and the other one obviously is a bit, it's not as refined as David's pattern. It's my big dreadnought clink hammer. Now you're talking 10 tons of hackle. You can make it whatever colour you want, but I prefer a black one. This one's like a March Brown type. And then we've got, this isn't Arrow Wing, it's in the post, this one, because Arrow Wing, for some reason, we can't seem to get Arrow Wing just now. TMCO, I don't know what's going on, but the suppliers in the UK are no longer selling Arrow Wing, which is a bit annoying. So I'm using the new Fooling Mill stuff. It seems to be alright. I'm going to get some in stock when I get a chance, but I've not had a chance to place an order. But it seems to float quite well. But this thing's, as I says, I've had fish on the Tummel, fish in the Clyde. A lot of times I'll be fishing the duo or the trio and I'll have this on and I'll be putting it into holes and popping it through. And if a fish comes up and slashes at that, that's telling me that they're willing to come up for a blind dry. So I'll swap to a dry fly, you know, and I'll go on a smaller clink hammer, or I'll go on my Cburg or whatever. But I don't know how many times I've had fish come up for that, and I've caught them. I've caught them in competitions using that. Sometimes when the fish comes up and slashes at that and you strike, if you've got a nymph bullet, you kind of pull the nymph into the fish's mouth. So, you know, a bit of a fluky, lucky catch a fish, but at the end of the day, the fishes came up for this, and people look at it and go, nah, fish isn't going to eat that, but they do. So that's the 2 extra mentions. They're not in my top 5 because, as I say, they're more like a utility dry fly rather than a proper dry fly, but they've got dual purpose. They'll hold the nymphs up and they catch fish. So I really do hope you enjoy the videos. Get ready for the next ones. I will do one on still waters for nymphs, a still water lure one and a still water dry fly one, but I just wanted to do that for the rivers just now, and I might do a rivers wet fly one because I quite enjoy fishing the wet fly. But I'll need to mention Spider-Man when I do the wet fly one, because one of the best flies is the Magic. So keep your eyes posted, hit the bell for any notifications for any new videos, and I really hope you enjoy that. So get yourself out there, get a bit of casting, and I hope you have a happy Easter. Tight lines, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.